We are in the 47th chapter of the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 47. Jacob is now down in Egypt. Joseph is basically the number 2 man in the whole nation of Egypt. He's basically, Pharaoh does what he tells him to do, so he's number 1, isn't he? If Pharaoh does what he says, he's number 1. And then Jacob, he says something here, or Joseph does, before he let's go back to the 46th chapter. So Israel set out all they had and came to Beersheba, and he offered sacrifices. And now the last time he came here to Bethel, he said, get rid of all your clothes, wash up, and straighten up, and throw all the idols out. He wanted to get them straightened out because the boys had killed everybody in Shechem. Jacob's sons, Levi and Simeon, went to Shechem and killed all the new converts. The people of Shechem had made a contract with Israel, or with Jacob, and they had been circumcised, and 3 days after they'd been circumcised, here comes Jacob's boys up there and kills every one of them. And they start the Canaanite wars. So Jacob says, clean up, get rid of the household idols, wash your clothes, and let's go to church, basically. And they did. Now he's getting ready to leave the land of Canaan, and God's going to tell him, now go ahead and do what you're supposed to do here. Go down to Egypt, because I'm going to send you down there. I'm going to provide for you down there. So Israel set out with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. And God spoke to Israel in visions in the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And Jacob said, here I am. He said, I am the God of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Egypt, for I will make you a great nation there. And we know that they would become over 1 million people. I will go down to Egypt with you, and I will surely bring you up again, and Joseph will close your eyes in death. You're going to die down in Egypt, but I will bring you up again. Jacob told them, do not bury me in Egypt. Take me back to the cave of Machpelah in Hebron and bury me there. Bury me there where Abraham and Isaac and now Jacob, and also Leah was buried there. Sarah was buried there first of all. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob and their little ones and their wives and their wagons, which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. They took their livestock and their property that they had acquired in the land of Canaan, and they came to Egypt, Jacob and all his descendants with him. And here, the last time we read this verse, we know that Jacob had more than one daughter. It mentions his daughter. What was his daughter's name? This is the test. Dinah. Dinah is why they killed all the men in Shechem, because they had covenanted with Israel for that girl, and they would become family with them. And of course, Levi and Simeon went out and then killed, and we find out later on that Simeon married Dinah, his sister. And they had children. And his sons and his grandsons with him, and his daughters. That's more than one daughter, daughters. And his granddaughters, and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. Now these are the names of the sons of Israel. Jacob and his sons who went down to Egypt were Reuben. Reuben, that's his first son. That was his first child. Reuben means see a son. Reuben, see a son. And Jacob's firstborn. And the sons of Reuben, Hanok, and Palu, and Hezron, and Carmi. And the sons of Simeon, Jamiel, and Jamin, and Ohad, and Jachin, and Zohar, and Shaul, the son of the Canaanite woman. And the sons of Levi were Gershon, Kohath, Merari, and by the These were the ones that would carry the Ark of the Covenant later on. Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. And the sons of Judah were and Onan and Shelah, and Perez and Zerah. But and Onan died in the land of Canaan. Remember why they died? God killed them. Got rid of them. And remember what happened with Judah. Their and Onan's wife were the same woman, Tamar. And God killed both of them, and then Judah would not give his last son, Shelah, to her for a husband. So she acted like a prostitute, went out by the side of the road, and there was a temple up there, and she acted like a prostitute, and Judah comes along and offers her money, or a lamb, basically, or a goat, for sexual favors. And she took his belt, she took his staff, and took his ring for security, and then he was going to have her killed. And she was pregnant with these two boys. And these two boys, through her, would come the Messiah. But these are the sons, Perez and Zerah, are the sons that Judah had with Tamar, his daughter-in-law. But of course she became his wife. But he never was with her again. And the sons of Perez were Hezron and Hamil, and the sons of Issachar, Tola and Puvah, and Job and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Zered and Elon and Jahalel. These are the sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob, Padam Aram, with his daughter Dinah. All his sons and his daughters numbered 33. Okay, his daughters and sons numbered 33. And the sons of Gad, and Zephon, and Haggai, and Shunai, and Esbon, and Eri, and Arodai, and Areli. And the sons of Asher were Imah, and Ishva, Ishvi, and Beriah, and their sister Sarah. And the sons of Beriah were Heba and Machel. The sons of Zilpah, whom Laban gave to his daughter, Leah, she bore to Jacob these 16 persons. Zilpah. The sons of Jacob's wife Rachel, Joseph, and Benjamin. And now to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim. And by the way, Jacob is going to adopt them to be his sons, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, bore to him. And the sons of Benjamin, Bela, and Belkar, and Ashbel, Gerah, Naaman, Ihi, Rosh, Mupim, Hupim, and Ard. These are the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob. There were 14 persons in all. The sons of Dan, Hushim. And the sons of Naphtali, Jaziel, and Guni, and Jazar, and Shelam. Now these are the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to his daughter Rachel, and she bore these to Jacob. There were 7 persons in all. All the persons belonging to Jacob who came to Egypt, his direct descendants, not including the wives of Jacob's sons, were 66 persons in all. And all the sons of Joseph who were born to him in Egypt were all 2. All the persons of the house of Jacob who came to Egypt were 70. Now these will turn into over 1 million. Now he sent Judah before him to Joseph, to point out the way before him to Goshen, and they came into the land of Goshen. And Joseph prepared his chariot and went up to Goshen to meet his father Israel. As soon as he appeared before him, he fell on his neck and wept on his neck for a long time. Then Israel said to Joseph, now Israel is Jacob. Israel is Jacob, the same person. Israel is Jacob's covenant name. Then Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face, that you are still alive. And Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, I will go up and tell Pharaoh, and will say to him, my brothers and my father's household, who were in the land of Canaan, have come here to me. And the men are shepherds, for they have been keepers of livestock, and they have brought their flocks with them, and their herds, and all that they have. And it shall come about when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? That you shall say, your servants have been keepers of livestock from our youth even until now, both we and our fathers, that you may live in the land of Goshen, for every shepherd is loathsome to the Egyptians. That was a low-type life. They didn't want any part of that. Now in chapter number 47, that is. Then Joseph went in and told Pharaoh, and said, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds are all that they have come out of the land of Canaan, and behold, they are in the land of Goshen. Now Pharaoh wanted to separate the Egyptians from these Jewish people, even though in all reality they were relatives. Did you know that? The Egyptians that were in power, the Pharaoh that was in power here, was actually related to Jacob. He told Pharaoh, my father and my brothers and their flocks and their herds and all that they have come out of the land of Canaan. And behold, they are in the land of Goshen. And they took 5 men from among his brothers and presented them to Pharaoh. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, what is your occupation? Now, they didn't tell him the whole story. They said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds, both we and our fathers. What else were they? You remember? These boys are warriors. Warriors. Great warriors. In the land of Canaan, they had killed over 100,000 people. These boys did. They are powerful men. When they went down into Egypt, all the other nations were afraid of Egypt because Joseph was a commander of the army. And his brothers were warriors. And his brothers' sons. They always feared them. As long as they were alive, they were feared in the land of Egypt. Not only were they relatives, but they were warrior relatives. And all the kings that came against, all the enemies that came against Egypt were taken care of by Joseph. He was the captain or the general of all the army of Egypt. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to pilgrim in your land, for there's no pasture for our servants and flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now therefore please let your servants live in the land of Goshen. That was a land that had a lot of pasture land down there in Old Goshen. All of the millions of cattle or whatever they had. Now what kind of animals and livestock did they have? What kind of livestock and that is named? At least.
Sheep.
There were sheep, of course. There were goats.
Donkeys.
And there were donkeys. There were camels. And there were cattle. And maybe even some elephants. Possibly. That would be the Mack truck of the day. The elephants. Elephants were very, very strong. They were very large and very strong. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is at your disposal. Settle your father and your brothers in the best of the land. Let them live in the land of Goshen. And if you know of any capable men among them, then put them in charge of my livestock. Now, the Egyptians did not like to take care of cattle or sheep or anything, but they ate them. They ate them, and they had other people among them, the lower class, were out there taking care of the cattle, and then Potiphar, the one that Joseph came in, was a chief executioner and a chief butcher. Not only did he execute the enemies of Pharaoh, but he also butchered the animals. He butchered animals, and before he butchered the animals, would make sure that they were healthy. Now these guys, these new people coming into the land, are going to take care of a lot of work that the Egyptians don't want to do. Then Joseph brought his father, Jacob, and presented him to Pharaoh, and Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Jacob is a covenant man, the one man in the world that is in covenant relationship with Jehovah God of Israel. He's the one. And Pharaoh said to Jacob, how many years have you lived? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the years of my pilgrimage are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life. Few and unpleasant. Why was his life unpleasant? Why was Jacob's life unpleasant? He was born into a family. He had a twin brother, Esau. His mother was Rebekah. His father was Isaac. His father doted on Esau, even though Esau was nothing but a leech. Basically, he was a leech. He didn't herd the cattle, protect the cattle. Jacob did all. He was the breadwinner of the family, so to speak. He went out and protected all the animals from foreign people that would come in and try to steal them. He protected them from wolves, jackals, bears, lions, whatever. And then he's the second born, so Esau is going to be the covenanted son. Except Esau is a playboy. He's out chasing women and hunting and playing around all the time while his brother is working. But his daddy likes strong meat. Strong meat. He liked wild game, so Esau likes, or Isaac likes Esau, not Jacob. Even though Jacob is providing food for the table and increasing the flocks, he's still doting on Esau, because he is a glutton for that wild game, antelope and deer, whatever. And it's stronger tasting, it's gamey food. And God had to blind old Isaac, didn't he? Because Isaac was bound and determined to go against the will of God. He was bound and determined to go against the will of God. When Rebekah was pregnant, she had a lot of wrestling in her womb between Isaac and Jacob, or Esau and Jacob. And God said, the lesser, the younger, shall become greater, and the older will become lesser. And I'm sure she told Isaac about that, and when they were born, here came out Esau, red and hairy. His name was Red and Hairy. That's what his name was. He had hair all over him, red hair all over him. Probably Rebekah had red hair also, a beautiful red-haired beauty. And she has this boy, and then here comes Jacob. Jacob had a hold of Esau's heel when he came out. And it means to grab by the heel. That's what Jacob means. The modern word for Jim or James is the word Jacob in Hebrew, Jacobu. All these names have meaning. Esau was out running around playing, chasing women and hunting, and didn't have any luck. And he came in, and his brother was cooking the cheapest commodity in the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan. And what was that? Lentils, like pinto beans. And he comes by there, and he said, give me some of that lentil stew, and he wanted some bread, and he wanted some meat, and he wanted some wine, all of this, but he just said he's concentrated on that lentil stew. He can smell that. He said, give me some of that. Jacob said, I'll give it to you if you'll sell me your birthright. He said, I don't care anything about my birthright. I don't care anything about it at all. You got it. Well, that was a big rumor through the whole family of Isaac and through their slaves and everything else that Esau had sold his birthright to Jacob. He didn't care. The Bible says that he despised his birthright. Well, then later on when Isaac gets older, he goes blind. He goes blind because God wanted him blind. He couldn't trust him to see. So now he tells Esau one day, and they're living in tents, and Rebekah is out there on the outside listening to the tent. Tent walls are, they're thin. Kind of like a speaker, to tell you the truth. And he says, go out there and get me some game and fix it for me like I like it, and come back and I want to bless you, and I'm going to look over Jacob and just throw him away. I know that he's God's man, but I want you to be God's man. And so Esau goes hunting. Rebekah tells Jacob, Jacob, go get a goat. Kill the goat. Bring it to me and I'm going to prepare it like your father likes. Go get me a billy goat. He got him a billy goat. Billy goats kind of strong flavored, aren't they? Yeah. Yeah. If you ever had one or smell one, you can just be around a billy goat and he stinks. Well, he got the billy goat, and he had the billy goat killed and skinned the billy goat and everything. And he said, look, my arms are slick and everything, and hairy is red and hairy. Esau is red and hairy. So she takes the stinky hides from that and sews them on his arms like gauntlets. And she takes some of Esau's stinky clothes and puts them on Jacob. He's smelly now. He smells just like his brother. And so he comes with the food. And Isaac says, your voice sounds like Jacob, but you smell like Esau. You stink like Esau. And you feel like him. You're all hairy, you smell, and you smell just like Esau, so I'll bless you. And he blesses him and does not give any blessings at all. He wants to completely leave Jacob out of the whole scene, and Jacob is the breadwinner. Well, he blesses him, and then Esau wants to kill him. So he has to leave and go into the land of Haran. And he does. And he goes up there, and he's cheated all the time he's up there. He meets his uncle, Laban, up there, and he works for him. And he said, well, I'm going to pay you. What do you want? He said, I'd like to have your daughter, Rachel. That's what I want, is Rachel. I'd like to have her. He said, well, work for 7 years for me, for Rachel. So he worked for 7 years, and he gets Jacob drunk, and he goes to his tent, and he throws his daughter Leah in there in the tent with him, and he cohabits with her, and she becomes his wife, and he looks up in the morning, and this is not Rachel. What have you done? His life is full of misery. His life is full of deceit and disappointments. So he said, I'll give you Rachel now. Just stay with her for a week and, keep sleeping with her for a whole week. Maybe she'll get pregnant, and then I'll give you Rachel. And he does. And he marries Rachel, but now it's 14 years, and then he works 7 more years, and he's working, and he said, I'm here, I've got a wife and all these kids, and I have no substance at all to support my family with. All of this is yours, and I've made, when I came here you were poor, and now you're rich. And Laban must have been a gambler, because he was gambling everything he had away. He gambled away his daughter's dowries. So God told Jacob, get out of here and go back home. and I'll put terror in old Laban's heart where he won't bother you. And he did. Laban went after him to kill him. He said, those are my daughters and my children. They weren't his daughters and his children anymore, and he had given handmaiden slaves to Leah, and Bilhah had been slaves to these two girls. And they had become his wives, and they had children by them, as we just saw. Jacob's life is full of trouble. He wanted one woman, he got 4 wives, and they were fighting over him, giving him nothing but trouble. Even the wife that he loved, he got angry with. He said, I'm not pregnant. He said, I've been with you plenty of times. It's not my fault you're not pregnant. I'm with you most of the time. Not my fault you're not pregnant. Well, then she gave her handmaiden to him. Finally, she had 1 child, which is Joseph. And then his sons deceived him and they were going to kill Joseph. But they deceived him. They put him in an outhouse, in a dungeon out there, and sold him 2 times before he got out of there. Then he went down to Egypt and he became a slave, and he go home and tell his daddy, Jacob, that some type of lion or animal has killed Joseph, and they take his bloody clothes back. Jacob mourns and mourns and mourns over this boy. The years of my sojourn pilgrim are 130. Few and unpleasant have been the years of my life. Unpleasant. He lived a life of grief. Then he goes and goes to Shechem. And his daughter, Dinah, is taken up there by Shechem, and he wants to marry her. He goes down and he makes a covenant with Jacob to marry his daughter, but the covenant with them that has to be that every male is circumcised, just like they are. They become Israelites, so to speak. 3 days after they have been circumcised, they're very sore, and so Simeon and Levi go in there and kill every one of them and steal their wives, steal their children, steal everything, all their livestock. They even cut the hamstrings of their oxen that they leave behind, so they can't do any work with them. They hamstrung everything. Jacob is, again, sorry. He said, you've made me stink in the nostrils of all the people of the land of Israel that come against us. Well, God stood with them. Those boys were warriors, and they whipped 100,000 Canaanites. And they dwelled in the land. My life is full of trouble. Full of trouble. And Jacob blessed Pharaoh. He said, my years 130, few and unpleasant have been the years of my life, nor have they attained the years that my fathers lived during the days of their pilgrimage. He said, I haven't got as old as they were, but my life was full of trouble. But God was with Jacob all the days of his life, wasn't he? Every day, every hour, every minute, God watched over him and brought him through all of this. And he had a lot of adversaries. He's one of my heroes in the Old Testament, Jacob is. They said he was a mama's boy. He was a mother's boy, all right. His father didn't want him. But he was God's man. He was God's boy, is who he was. Father, I thank you for your word. I thank you for this message from your word. Please watch over us like you watched over Jacob. No matter what obstacles we have, we know that we can overcome through you, even though sometimes the outcome isn't like we want it to be. Father, please forgive me where I fail you, and use this message to touch people's lives all over the world. In Jesus' name I pray.